This is 1965 Ford Falcon by Tim Foley. It's a beauty, isn't it? Custom dark blue paint, clean body, sportiness of a two-door. You won't find one like that around every corner, that's for certain. 65. No, the 66 is a little rounder, less squared off. A beauty, don't you think? The price is right. A steal at that price. And if you're at all serious, I'll let you in on a little secret. The price is not firm. You get me? Now you should know that this is not a museum piece. You can ignore the odometer. The engine is not the original. Oh, it's a Falcon engine, all right, but it's a rebuilt 67. So you got a 67 engine and a 65 car. If you are some kind of purebred vintage guy, this one's not for you. But if you want a car that actually runs, that will make you the absolute coolest guy in town, that provides the long-lost, all-American, classic Motor City vibe, you cannot beat this car. Here, sit behind the wheel. Yeah, the upholstery's been replaced also, but that's a good thing to consider. Still got that classic bench seat. And the steering wheel is great, isn't it? Wider across than the ones they make now, and so thin with those grooves for your fingers. I swear that baked enamel plastic was designed for space travel. Totally cool. And again, the price. Seriously, you cannot, you will not, you will never beat that price. I've owned it less than a year. It belonged to my girlfriend. I inherited it, you might say, when she left for Texas. Where should I start? Emily was something. Beautiful, thin, dark green eyes and long black hair. She was a mite neurotic and a tad obsessive, I suppose. She only slept 3 hours a night unless she had been drinking. She smoked a pack a day. She was exquisite, and I was smitten. She had been the tomboy of her father's 3 daughters, and he taught her everything he knew about cars, which was a whole lot more than I knew. She loved to work on engines especially, and wore black lacquered polish so you couldn't see the caked grease under her nails. Half the time she had an oil smudge on her forehead. Trolling junkyards was her favorite way to spend a Saturday afternoon. Since I didn't even own a car at the time, things evened out. She moved into my house, and before long there was a 61 Volvo in pieces in the driveway, and a 64 Corvair engine in the garage. Most nights she prowled around the house, a cloud of menthol trailing her from room to room, drifting into the garage where she listened to Nick Cave croon through an old stereo while she rebuilt a carburetor or cleaned spark plugs or some such, her hair ponytailed, wearing 3 faded sweaters of various colors over her bony shoulders. Like I said, I was smitten. One day the Falcon showed up in front. It was in great condition, she said, and she seemed really excited about it. After a couple of weeks, I noticed that she would only drive the Falcon in the daylight hours, and never at night. We generally rode my motorcycle when we went out, so I didn't think much of it. But eventually I asked why. She evaded the question. Turned out being evasive was a pretty common thing with her. One weekend in April, I had to go see my brother in Bakersfield. I was away for a couple of days. When I got back, Emily was gone. Everything with her clothes and music, the car parts, even the Volvo. Pretty clean break. Except for the Falcon, which sat there, parked next to the curb in front of the house, the key hanging from a hook near the refrigerator. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. She called me from San Antonio and said that she was sorry things had not worked out. I felt like I was drowning and did not say much. Finally, grasping for something to hold on to, I asked about the Falcon. I don't really need it, she said, so I left it. You want it? You should have it. And you need a car. Sure, I guess. I would really do just about anything she said at that particular moment. After I hung up, I walked out to the Falcon and climbed in. I drove it around Midtown and filled it with gas. Then I drove it down to Freeport, across the river, and on to Clarksburg and Delta Delta. I thought driving her car would remind me of her, that a scent would help me retain some connection, that a scratch on the dashboard would trigger a memory. But I soon realized that it was no good. This car held a personality of its own. She had owned it, but it was not hers. There was nothing about it that retained anything about her. Or rather, there was something about the car, some other presence that eclipsed her. I drove back to Sacramento, parked in Midtown, and walked over to the Torch Club. I sat at the bar and ordered a beer. I had some idea about a liberal ritual of loss involving alcohol in a dive bar. After a couple of hours and a few more beers, my mood had not improved at all. I figured the time had come for the sad sack drowning in sorrows to give way to the night crowd searching for fun. I left as a blues band started playing. It wasn't late, and I swear I wasn't drunk, but it was dark. The Falcon was parked on 14th Street near some apartments. The lighting was not too good, and a couple of ash trees crowded the sidewalk, buckling the concrete with their roots and casting shadows with their branches. I was walking to the car, past the other cars parked by the curb, when I noticed something strange and stopped dead in my tracks. I saw a figure moving inside the Falcon. I was maybe 3 cars back and stood there, trying to get a better look through the shadows and darkness. The other cars partially blocked my view, but I could see a head and shoulders, a black outline, shifting in the front seat. Now, I've had cars broken into before, if that was what was happening. I was upset, maybe a little afraid, and in a bit of an emotional whirlpool. I stooped down, ducking, and started creeping slowly along the curb by the side of the other parked cars. I glanced up, and it was hard to make out any detail in the darkness, but I'm sure there was something moving inside the Falcon. Crouching, I approached the car, soundlessly. When I got to the Falcon's rear panel, I slowly stood up and felt very foolish. There was nothing there. The car has huge windows in the old style, an uninterrupted slab of glass in the back. I could take in the entire interior at a glance. No one was in the car. I stood there, watching shadows shift as the streetlights filtered through the branches, wondering. The foolishness I felt was gradually replaced by a slow, unspecific, creeping fear. I walked around and unlocked the driver's door, reached in and turned on the globe light. I looked in the back seat. I went back around and checked the passenger side door lock. I opened the trunk and was mocked by the emptiness. I told myself that I was drunk, but I felt sober as a judge. My heart was pounding like an overheating nail gun. I sat in the car, shut the door, turned off the globe light, took the steering wheel in my hands. I told myself I had not actually seen what I thought I had seen, but now I felt something. An intangible but insistent, slow, rising darkness. I looked in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a face. I turned and stared at the passenger side seat, cold and empty. I could hear myself breathing hard. Clutching the keys, I opened the door and pushed myself up and out of the car, stumbling as I propelled myself from the interior. I straightened up, slammed the door, stepped back, and turned and walked away. I caught a cab home. In the sunshine of the next morning, I again felt foolish. I called into work at the bottling plant and begged off. Took a bus into Midtown. Whatever feeling of dread had risen from inside the car the night before was gone. I told myself that I had simply been reacting to the shadows, the sadness, the alcohol. But a persistent, subtle anxiety tugged at my thoughts. I drove the Falcon over to the garage on P Street where my buddy Freddie works. He's a stand-up guy and I called in a favor. Freddie looked at the Falcon, put it on the lift, drove it around the block, and rummaged around under the hood. That's when I found out about the 67 engine. Freddie told me some major work had been done on the car, but the chassis was sound and was generally in good shape. He ran the registration when he found out that some guy named Eric White was listed as a legal owner. Emily had been vague about the pink slip. I drove back to my house, parked the car in front. I stood next to it for a long time looking at it. The dark blue paint reflected the midday sun. Nothing unusual here, I told myself. It's just an old car. I went inside and called Emily. I called even though it might give me away as a weak, broken-hearted jerk, inventing some excuse to contact her. I could tell by her voice and manner that she did not want to speak with me. It's about the Falcon, I said. What about it? She admitted that she knew about the 67 engine, but didn't volunteer much else. I did not want to mention that I had seen or thought I saw the night before, so the conversation became an awkward mix of hints and half sentences. Finally, I asked, "Why didn't you drive it at night?" There was a long silence, then, "What do you mean?" "Remember, you never drove that car at night. You always made an excuse." "Why?" "This is silly," she said. "Who was Eric White?" I countered. She had bought the car from a guy named Eric, who worked as a bartender over at the Whiskey West Saloon. "You should talk with him," she said. "I will." Goodbye then. I rode my motorcycle over to the Whiskey West near the railroad tracks on T Street. It was a quiet on a weekday afternoon and only a few hard cases at the bar. I lucked out because I found Eric easily, cutting lemons at the end of the bar in the dim light. He had a salt and pepper goatee and wore a sleeveless shirt that revealed skinny arms tattooed with images that looked as if they had shrunken with the arms. "How was Emily?" he asked, after I explained who I was. "Fine. She's in San Antonio now. And she unloaded the Falcon on you?" "Yeah." I watched him slice the lemon into wedges. "About the title, no worries, just a detail. I sold it to her for cash. I'll see if I can find the pink slip." He stepped away to pour a bourbon for a customer, then returned to where I was sitting, lemon wedges lined up. "Anything else?" he asked. "Yeah, a couple of things about the car." "Like?" "Well, the engine was replaced." "Of course, the original was water damaged." "Water damaged? Hello, she didn't tell you?" He grinned in a lopsided way and raised his hands up. "Not cool." I was straight with her about the history, totally upfront. "The history? Of the car?" It didn't bother her. In fact, I think she liked it. I think there was a certain fascination there. He laughed when he saw my mystified expression. "I don't know what on earth..." "Well, yes, that's obvious, but listen, I got work to do." He popped the lemon wedges into a plastic container and wiped the knife on his jeans. "But I think I know where that pink slip is. I'll meet you tomorrow. I've got some other stuff that you should see." The afternoon shadows were deep and long when I returned home. The Falcon sat in front of the house. I opened the door and searched it carefully. Glove compartment, under the seats, everywhere. I found some maps, a few coins, some dull and personal things. I saw something that I hadn't noticed before. Around the door handle, on the passenger side, 3 deep scratches gouged the vinyl lining of the door. When night came, I didn't sleep very much. I kept getting up and looking through the front window at the car. Very late in the quiet, I got dressed and walked outside. The Falcon brooded in the starlight. I had found some of Emily's cigarettes in the nightstand next to the bed, and I brought them out. For the first time in years, I smoked, watching the Falcon in the night. "You owe me $1.30, Eric said when he met me at Temple Coffee in Midtown the following afternoon. I made some copies at Kinko's. He slapped some pages down on the table next to my coffee cup and sat down across from me. He was wearing a black hoodie sweatshirt, and he smelled like turpentine. "She should have told you." I looked at him blankly. I was missing work again, and the caffeine I had ingested was inadequate to overcome my sleep deprivation. Just looking at him made me crave a cigarette. He watched me, and to my surprise, I thought I saw a small shade of concern come to his thin, hard face. "It's a suicide car," Eric said. "After they pulled it out of the river, it was a mess, but basically intact. Somebody loved Falcons and replaced the engine and the upholstery. Since then, no one keeps that car very long. It's probably had 24 owners." He laid one bony hand on my shoulder and held out another piece of paper in the other. "And here's the pink slip." We sat looking at each other until I realized he was finished speaking, but still waiting for his money. After Eric left, throwing me a final look of pity, I read the pages before me. There were copies of receipts for work on the car, dating to 1987. Then there were 5 articles from the Sacramento Bee, dated November and December of 1986. The articles told of Peter Mallory and Julie Capello, troubled sweethearts. He was 24, she was 19. He loved old cars and owned a '65 Falcon. He also loved cocaine. A week before Thanksgiving, a lady was walking her dog on Brinkley Street, high up where the road curves along the cliffs of Fair Oaks above the American River. It was 10 o'clock on a clear night with a full moon. She heard an engine, loud and strong, and turned to see the Falcon churning up the road. She told the sheriff's department that she knew the car was going far too fast to make the turn. From what she could tell, the driver didn't even try. The car jumped the curve, roared across the open field, straight through the undergrowth, and plunged over the cliff. A couple hundred feet below, the river was running high after a rainy autumn. The Falcon hit the water nose first like a torpedo. The note written by young Mallory and found in his apartment's book of shame, addiction, drug debt, and a suicide pact. Follow-up articles in the Bee tracked the aftermath of the tragedy, for Mallory was no ordinary drug-addled loser. He was the son of a state senator. There were photos of the double funeral. I read the articles through twice, and then again. My stomach felt queasy. My head throbbed. What a sad, depressing story. 2 foolish kids having a tough time, driven to the point of surrender. I sat and cradled my empty, cold coffee cup. Darkness had fallen when I left the cafe. My cell phone rang, making me jump as I approached the Falcon. I had been watching almost without realizing it for any movement or shadow as I walked towards the car, my nerves on edge. When I answered the call, I heard Eric's voice over the sounds of the saloon. Hey, there's something I should tell you about that car, he said. I wasn't going to mention it, but I decided, go ahead, I said mechanically. I was standing next to the driver's door, looking into the Falcon's interior through the windshield. Maybe it was nothing, but not long before I sold the car to Emily, I was driving home from a party late one night. I had a girl with me. She was sitting on the passenger side beside me. All of a sudden, she screamed. She started twisting about like she'd gone crazy, terrified. She wouldn't stop until I pulled over. Yeah? She said that something grabbed her. She accused me. She had scratches on her arm. It was weird. Weird? I never touched her. He hung up. I got in the car. I set the pages Eric had given me on the front seat beside me in the shadows. I turned the ignition and started the engine. It would take me 10 minutes to drive home. I was very tired, drained from my lack of sleep, my broken heart, and the odd obsession with the car. And now I was weighed down with the story of Peter and Julie riding in a suicide car. I tried to ignore the sense of dread that rose around me as I pulled out, the sense of fear that made me spin my head to look in the back seat more than once, that made me afraid to look in the rearview mirror, that made me keep eyeing the empty space beside me where a passenger would sit. Nothing happened until I turned left onto Broadway. The pages sitting by my side shifted. I was looking forward, driving, but I saw movement at the edge of my vision. My initial thought was that they slid with the momentum of the car as it made the turn, but then they leaped forward, off the seat and onto the floorboard, just exactly as if they had been pushed. Just then, I felt something strike my right shoulder on my right side, just exactly as if someone was sitting beside me and leaned into me. I barely kept control of the car. Somehow I finished the turn, though I jerked the wheel over. There was no car beside me, luckily, and I made the first right turn that I could, braking shakily to a stop. I jumped out of the car and stood in the street, my left hand grasping my right shoulder, my breathing wild. It took every last ounce of will to climb back in that car for the 15 seconds it took to park and reload. Having something bump your shoulder when you know nothing is there is not pleasant. Not at all. I walked home. The next morning, I begged off work again. The boss started yelling and fired me over the phone. I didn't much care. I got dressed and walked to the Falcon. Then I drove to the sheriff's department. A helpful clerk rewarded my patience and persistence. They charged me $1 a page, but I got a copy of the sheriff's report on the accident. I read it carefully. Peter Mallory and Julie Capello, dead when they were pulled from the car. The doors were locked from the inside, the windows rolled up. It must have taken a long time for the car to fill with water. And if they were conscious, time for a conversation. Time to think about the soft joys of life. Time to regret a foolish decision as the cold water poured in through the gaps and cracks. The car sank and shifted in the current. He had alcohol in his system, but no drugs. She was clean. How was it possible that they could have just sat there waiting, the water rising over their legs, their chests, their faces? The report gave me another name, Allison Harper, the lady walking her dog who called the sheriff's office from her home in the Cliffside neighborhood as she watched a vintage Ford drive straight over a cliff. It was still daylight when I drove to Fair Oaks. I knew it was a long shot, but as I got close, I could tell it was a neighborhood where people tended to plant themselves and stay put, elegant ranch-style homes. I parked the Falcon in front of the address listed in the report. A small lady with blue eyes answered the door, opening it, only a crack. 2 yapping Yorkshire Terriers scratched and snuffled and yipped at her feet. I had the sheriff's report in my hand and I tried to explain myself. She looked past me and saw the car, her eyes widened, and her expression changed from distrust to curiosity as she swung the door wide open. Allison, for I knew it was her by her actions, strode out of the house, stepped off the walk, and was halfway across the lawn when she said, "That's the car." "Yes, that's the car," I said. The terrier sniffed at my shoes as I followed her onto her front lawn. She reached out and I handed her the report. A pair of reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. Her white hair was wrapped in a blue scarf and she wore a pink sweater frayed at the sleeves and the neckline. As she read the report, a small smile crept onto her face. "They left a few things out, didn't they?" She stabbed at the top of the report with a fingernail. "You see this?" I tried to look past her finger. "It stated the 19th, she went on. 2 days later. I stared at her saying nothing. "So they could fix it," she chirped, a little impatiently. The terriers were wandering about the lawn, bold with my shoes. "Fix what?" I finally spoke. Allison lowered the report and looked into my face. She was screaming, you see. the girl in the passenger seat. I could hear her even above the engine, screaming in fear. And I think I caught a glimpse of her face. It was long ago and it happened very quickly. It was dark, of course, but I remember that impression I had of her face, absolutely terrified. Like that painted by Munch. And I told them all. That's not mentioned at all, I said. It was past midnight when they pulled the car out of the river. I was curious, so I went down to see. I watched them winch it out, watched them smash the window to get inside. I saw the bodies when they pulled them out. I looked from Allison's eager face to the Falcon, imagining the same. The water-filled car, the top winch line, the dead inside, the deputies fumbling at the handle of the locked doors. The girl had her hands tied behind her back, said Allison. She rounded up the dogs and invited me in. She made tea and served me lemon cookies on a round kitchen table covered in a macrame tablecloth. The terriers nuzzled my legs and circled for drop crumbs. So there was a cover-up. After all these years, it's hard to understand why it mattered or why anyone bothered. But the boy's father was important and thought he had a political future, I suppose. A family tragedy caused by drug addiction must have been thought less scandalous than a slaying. Maybe there is a sad romantic notion associated with a suicide pact that is not associated with a cold-blooded and cruel murder. The funerals were together, I said. That poor girl, she said. When Allison shut the door behind me, I realized that the day had ended and night had returned. I walked out to the Falcon and climbed inside. It was so still I could hear crickets. I drove slowly down the intersection with Brinkman. I suppose you would say I had a choice then, but I'm not sure I did. I suppose I could have turned right and gone down the hill, but I didn't. Thinking back, I'm not sure I really was in control. I turned left toward the curve and the cliff. I remember having the impression how little the street had changed and then realizing with an increasing panic that I had never been on this street before. But the houses, their shapes and sizes, the gaps in the vegetation and the contour of the road were all familiar. The houses ended in the curve at the top of the hill where the road turned east along the cliff approached. My foot snapped down and the Falcon surged forward, gaining speed. As in some kind of dark, bitter dream, I could not control the car. I simply rode, a terrified spectator. I saw the curve coming toward me as the speed increased. I could not turn the steering wheel. Everything was happening as it should, with a shouted wave of inevitability driving it. The car jumped the curve, bouncing me into the roof, and the wheels churned in the dirt, propelling the vehicle toward the point where the land ended and empty space began. A roar of noise sounded in my head, more even than the engine, more even than the scream. With a supreme, blessed effort, I ripped my hands from the frozen wheel and turned enough to find the door handle. I pulled with everything I had and threw myself against the door. It sprang open and I hit the ground, rolling away from the car. Then, like a nightmare suddenly running its course, the Falcon quickly slowed and came to a stop, 10 feet from the edge of the cliff. The headlights shone out through the swirling dust, out over the river, off into the night. Without someone inside, there was no point in going over, was there? I lay in the dirt, watching the Falcon, listening to the warm hum of the motor idling as it waited for me to return. The tow truck guy thought I was nuts. The car had a flat tire but was otherwise fine. Still, I made him tow it to his shop before I would even go near it. It cost me plenty, but I didn't care. So I do have a few recommendations. First, don't drive it at night. Second, don't drive it near any cliffs. And don't ever go down Brinkman Street, okay? Other than that, wait, Toko. Did I mention that the price is negotiable?